Sin patterns. When we sin against someone and do not seek forgiveness, we should not be surprised if someone sins against us in a similar fashion. Here now is Dr. Gene Getz.
Now notice what happened. Boy, you know, the plot thickens. We have here an interesting, it's humorous, the messes that people get themselves into. And we see it. And the deceptiveness that comes back in our own hearts. Look at the story. 29, Genesis 29. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed. I want to sleep with her. I've worked the 7 years. She belongs to me. You promised me." So Laban invited all the men of the place to a feast. And that evening, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. By the way, where do you think Rachel is? She's got to be hogtied somewhere. She knows all about this. I mean, she loves this man, and her father won't let her marry him, but instead deceives Jacob and gives Jacob Leah. So he gave his slave Zilpah to his daughter, and Leah as her slave. And when morning came, and this is the most humorous part of this whole story, he wakes up in the middle of the tent in the morning, and there was Leah. He had no idea. And you say, why in the world didn't he know it wasn't Rachel? Number one, it was dark. Number two, he probably was drunk because they had this big celebration. And so here is this pagan wedding, as it were, and he is deceived. And so he said to Laban, coming out of that tent like a bull, charging, I'm sure, "What is this you've done to me? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked for you? Why have you deceived me?" Hello, Jacob. Hello. Who's deceiving who? You see, what comes around goes around. And here is this experience now coming back full in his face. One deceiver to another. And I think, Uncle Laban had this in his mind all along. Or very shortly after the 7-year deal was struck, he thought, I'll work this out. And Laban answered, "It is not the custom in this place." And that comes right back in Jacob's face because he's come up with this plan to circumvent the custom, and Uncle Laban says, well, why not? But in the back of his mind, he's saying, I'll work this out. And he's going to get 7 years of labor out of Jacob. And that's a lot of money. Calculates into a lot of money. "It is not the custom in this place to give the younger daughter in marriage before the firstborn." You know that, he's saying to Jacob. But he said, and this is part of his strategy as well, adding insult to injury, "Complete this week of wedding celebration," and that's how long they had in that culture, "and we'll also give you this younger one in return for working yet another 7 years for me." I mean, you talk about cruel. You talk about manipulation. You talk about materialism. You talk about taking advantage. But what had Jacob done to Esau? Stole his birthright. Stole the blessing. It's coming right back in his face. Isn't that interesting? Because sometimes it takes that happening to us to see ourselves and what kind of people we really are. Jacob, I don't think, even realized it was coming back in his face. And Jacob did just that. Didn't work another 7 years before he got Rachel. He just had to commit that he would work another 7 years, and immediately, a week later, he got Rachel. But now he's got another mess, as we'll see, and now he has 2 wives, and one he didn't love and the other one he did. You talk about dysfunction and what sin leads to. So he finished the week of celebration. Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife, and Laban gave his slave Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her slave. And Jacob slept with Rachel also, and indeed, he loved Rachel more than Leah. And boy, that is really the root of another huge problem. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. Now the question that relates to this is related to satanic strategy, obviously, because here we have a reference really to what Satan loves to do, and that is to take advantage of our vulnerabilities and use them against us. Remember what Jesus said? You are of your father the devil, referring to the religious leaders of his day, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and has not stood in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature because he is a liar. He is the father of liars. Where does deception come from? Satan himself. Earlier, same passage, Jesus said, you will know the truth. And what does the truth do? It sets us free. There's no place for deceptive behavior. We must not allow these old sin patterns to continue in our lives. It takes time to change, and that's why Paul wrote to the Ephesians and said we're to stand with the truth like a belt around our waist. Righteousness like armor on our chest. Isn't it fascinating that here God allowed Jacob to face the very thing that he had done to Esau following his conversion. And also to get a taste of what he did to Laban. Because Laban's out front. He's ahead of him. Deceivers can be strategizing against each other. And Laban was a better strategizer than even Jacob. By the way, you know what the word Jacob means? Deceiver. He was named Jacob, interestingly, because when he was born, he came second, and he had a hold of his brother Esau's leg. And that was real cute, because there's no way that he intentionally could have done that, and just as a newborn. But they looked at it, and by the way, in the Hebrew, the word Jacob means deceiver, which is applied to a wrestling move, where you're wrestling and you put a move on your opponent, and that's what it looked like. And they said, isn't that cute? Let's call him Jacob. Not realizing that Esau would later say, when he deceived him and his father, didn't they rightly name you Jacob? You are a deceiver. And so God is dealing with this issue in Jacob's life. And we see him at work, helping him with this real serious experience, negative experience, to come to grips with his own weakness. What goes around comes around. Let me leave you with this question. Can you recall an experience when someone's sin against you actually served as a verbal and visual reminder of what you had done to someone else? I'll just let you think about that.